Hi guys, it's Chelsea the Reading Outlaw here today to do a three-way book review of some audiobooks that I've actually been listening to recently. We have just undergone RFID conversion at my library, which basically means we converted to a new checkout system and had to do a bunch of digital record keeping. So we closed to the public for an entire week and we did a huge conversion. And basically, what that meant all day was that I was alone with piles of books and my headphones in listening to audiobooks. So during that time, I actually managed to finish one audiobook that I'd already started. I wrapped up a whole nother audiobook and then started a third audiobook at the end of the week that I have since finished over the weekend. So I'm going to talk about all three of those audiobooks and just do kind of quick reviews of each one because that's what I've been reading this past week, has all been in my ears. The first one is Missoula by John Krakauer. The subtitle is, I believe, Rape in a College Town. This is the latest from John Krakauer, who, if you're not familiar, is an absolutely wonderful investigative journalist who has done, he did Into the Wild, he did Under the Banner of Heaven, he's done, Into Thin Air, I believe was his first one, or at least one of his most popular ones. He's an amazing writer. He does very, very thorough research, and this most recent book is actually about kind of rape culture looked at through the lens of this small town in Montana named Missoula. It's where the University of Montana is. There were, I believe, some 250 rapes in between 2010 and 2012. I believe that's the time frame that he looks at. I will link to the Goodreads down below so that you can have all of the correct factual information. Normally I have better notes, but it's kind of hard to take really good notes when you're listening to an audiobook. But essentially what he looked at is kind of the culture of rape and why people go to the police for rape, why they may or may not go to the police for rape, what it's like to go through the justice system on a college campus if you've been a victim of sexual assault. One of the big kind of myths that Krakauer is working to dispel is that Missoula has often been referred to as the rape capital of the United States. And while, there is definitely a problem with sexual assault on the college campus, Krakauer points out that if you do the math, there aren't necessarily more rapes in Missoula than there are in any other college town in America, which is both somewhat reassuring for Missoula in terms of reputation, but also incredibly frightening and an incredibly huge problem. This book was really difficult to listen to. There are a lot of descriptions of several sexual assaults. There are several times at which prosecutors and police women, men and women, are act in a way towards the victim that is both a denial of the suffering that they have faced and also an accusation of their viability. Not viability is not the right word, of their honesty, essentially, calling them liars. There are several questions like, do you have a boyfriend? Or, had you been drinking? What were you wearing? That imply kind of an automatic assumption of guilt on the part of the female, or an asking for it, if you will, because, being labeled a sexual assaulter, being labeled a rapist, carries with it such huge consequences that there's often a desire to want to not have to do that if at all possible, even if that's the exact thing that's warranted. It's a complicated issue, and Krakauer does an amazing job explaining it. He looks at several cases from the University of Montana of girls who both were victorious and non-victorious in their prosecution of their rapists, and what that whole spectrum of experiences is like, from the actual event itself to the first reporting. I would definitely recommend that you read it or give a listen to it if you can. Like I said, it is an intense listen. You will probably have to take breaks. I did. It just gets very honestly graphic, and it's such a horrible situation to have to try and put oneself in, or to hear about somebody else going through, that it's a very, very powerful book. I absolutely loved it. Gave it 5 stars. I give most of John Krakauer's books 5 stars because I think he does such a great job. The second book that I listened to, that was the one that I had already started, but then I finished up. The next one that I listened to, the complete one that I listened to, was actually a kind of complete change of pace. And it was Salem's Lot by Stephen King. This I actually listened to or wanted to listen to because it has been recommended to me by several sources, including Chris from the Reading Roads in his Dark Tower video, which I will link to below. One of the best videos I think I've seen on BookTube, and definitely one of the best videos I've ever seen on the Dark Tower series. But as you guys may know, if you've watched my past videos, I'm reading through Stephen King's high fantasy Dark Tower series, and it was recommended to me by several sources that I read Salem's Lot before I read the fifth book, The Wolves of the Kaya, and that is where I am in the series, so I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way, and they had the audiobook on Scribd, so it was absolutely perfect. The narrator did a great job. I think he did a really good job kind of differentiating both between all the characters as well as between the ages of the main narrator, because there are times when he's kind of flashing back as well as times when he's telling the story in the present. I The story was okay. It wasn't quite as terrifying for me as I think I was hoping it would be based on some of the reviews that I've read. I wasn't expecting such blatant vampires. For some reason, I was expecting something slightly more subtle, kind of like what his son Joe Hill did in Nosferatu, which was also a vampire story, but in a much kind of more metaphorical, metaphysical, creepier way. In Salem's Lot, it's very literal. There were definitely some creepy, jumpy moments. There were times I was questioning, like halfway through, whether it was the best book to be listening to while alone in the stacks of the library, like by myself doing nothing. But on the whole, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I think I gave it like a 3.5 stars on Goodreads, or I would have given it a 3.5 stars if Goodreads were compliant. But that's, it was good. I'm glad I read it. I'm working on reading all of Stephen King anyway, so this was a good chance to get through it. I just wish there had been a little bit more mystery and a little bit less like gore horror. And the last audiobook I listened to or started listening to and then finished up over the weekend while doing some coloring was How to Paddle Your Own Canoe, One Man's Guide to Delicious Living by Nick Offerman, who plays Ron Swanson on The Office. The audiobook was good. It was not as funny as I was hoping it would be. I think I made the mistake of watching his comedy special American Ham first, which is essentially the same kind of content as his book, although his book does get far more biographical. And his comedy special obviously was much funnier because it's a comedy special. And that was my fault. That was my kind of fault of expectation. But I just didn't quite think it was as funny as I was hoping it would be. There was also a lot of talk of theater people and plays and woodworking people that, because I don't follow either of those two passions, I didn't know anything about, so I didn't particularly enjoy them. But Ron Swanson is an incredibly... See, this is the problem, and he actually talks about this in the book, is that I have a very hard time separating Nick Offerman, the human being, from Ron Swanson, the television character, who I'm absolutely in love with and obsessed with. So I literally have called, like, as I just did, have called him Ron Swanson and referring to him several times, although that is not his name. His name is Nick Offerman, and Nick Offerman is an incredibly intelligent man. He has an amazing vocabulary. He's very in love with his wife, and he tells a number of very cute anecdotes involving the two of them. Those are probably my favorite parts. He didn't do quite as much behind the scenes Parks and Rec stuff as I was hoping he would, and not as much as Amy Poehler did in her book. If you're looking for kind of a behind the scenes talk about the people and the environment of filming Parks and Rec, then I would definitely pick up Yes Please by Amy Poehler instead of this one. But if you're looking for, an actual biographical story of a very, very intelligent, kind, respectable, old-fashioned person who grew up in an an Illinois farm in Minooka, Illinois. That's one thing, although, hold on, side note, that's one thing about the audiobook that I really didn't like, is I felt it was really repetitive. I almost felt like the chapters were written as like columns or something, and then he felt like he needed to recap a bunch. Like he told us 100 times where he was from, who his wife was, what his theater company was named, like enough times that I started to feel like it was getting like really repetitive. But other than that, I love that he read the audiobook himself, and I really enjoyed the listening experience. I mean, I didn't like it, like I didn't hate it enough that I stopped, like I finished the whole book. So that's it. Those are the 3 audiobooks that I managed to get through in the week of technology conversion at my library. I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing my reviews. I'll try and put inset covers, if not in the actual video itself. I will also link to all the Goodreads for the actual books down below in case you want to check them out. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you've been listening to lately, or if you have any really good audiobook recommendations. Bonus points if it's on Scribd, because I am a Scribd member now. And as always, I will see you guys around the internet.